Hey guys, it's Mary and today I'm filming my April wrap-up. April has been a very long month, surprisingly, because I feel like January is the longest month of the year, but this time January sort of passed very quickly and April was infinite. And I feel like I've read a lot of books, but I also feel like I haven't been reading that much in April. I feel like the first books that I read in the beginning of April are already sort of fading. It feels like I read them a long time ago. But maybe, you know, it's because I've been reading books that are fairly short. I did read, I think 7 or 8 books, but they were not, you know, very long. So probably that's why, because there were chunks of April where I didn't read at all because I got a major hyper focus on TV shows from the 90s, early 2000s. I just was remembering when I was a child, what I used to watch. I rewatched the entire series of Boy Meets World. That's probably my favorite series of all time. But yeah, April has been a bit of a mixed bag, also in terms of rating and things that I read, in terms of, you know, enjoyment of the things that I read. I did have a 5-star read though, so I'm eager to get to all the books. Let's start from actually the very beginning. I'm gonna go in the order in which I read them. First up, so let's get the manga out of the way. I feel like I've been talking about this manga for ages, but also, you know, of course, people are not watching every single video, so I feel like I have to tell you the synopsis and everything. But I finished and I read the last 3 volumes for Kimi wa Pet or Tramps Like Us. I'm just gonna probably put a picture here of the English translation. This is by Yayoi Ogawa, and I own an Italian translation. Very old, but actually it was in a perfect condition. This is sort of an old manga from the early 2000s, and it didn't age very well, I have to say. The story follows a young woman. She's 30, I believe, not even 30 actually. In the manga she's sort of 27, 28. She has a brilliant career, she has a boyfriend, but she's having quite a rough week because she's been dumped by her boyfriend, whom she thought she was going to marry. She gets demoted at work. She's just having quite a bad week, and when she goes back home to her apartment, she finds in a cardboard box this young boy, all battered and bruised and in need of some care and help. So she helps him out and actually lets him stay at her house for the night. She feeds him and lets him stay because he apparently doesn't have anywhere else to go. He's young, but he's not underage, just so you know. He's 19. But yeah, so he actually asks her to stay, and at first she resists, and then sort of jokingly she tells him that he can stay if he stays as her pet, basically. So the premise is very weird, and it's not normally something that I would be drawn to. But the reason why I picked up this manga is because I have watched, for the life of me, I don't remember how I came across this TV show, this J-drama, but I watched the 2017 TV adaptation for this, and it's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I swear to God, I was pregnant when I was watching it, so probably I got very emotional for that reason, but I loved it so much that I also watched the previous TV adaptation, not so good, not as good as the 2017 one. And then I also, wanted to check out the source material, which also is not so good because, yeah, it's, as I said, it's very old. It's got some tropes, it's got some jokes that are not funny, some politically incorrect stuff. Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, it was a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the volumes I appreciated, some I really didn't. I wouldn't suggest you the manga. I would redirect you to the 2017 TV show because they did change and tweak some parts of the manga that weren't really working. And with this kind of story, it's very subtle how you can, flip it in a way or in another way, depending on the character's arc and the character's development. But the TV show please go and watch it because it's beautiful. I loved it. Oh, such a cute story. Yeah, so moving on from the manga, also a Japanese book. We've got The Woman in the Dunes by Kōbō. So this was translated from the Japanese by Edale Saunders. And I was surprised to see that I gave this book 2 stars, because I remember not really enjoying this book that much, but I thought I'd been a bit more generous with my rating, but no, I gave this book 2 stars, which it's not for saying that I hated it. I did find it interesting to see why people still value and still even enjoy this book, but it just wasn't the book for me, I guess. So the book starts telling us that this man disappeared in this sort of desert-like environment that is not really a desert because there's a sea. There's the sea, so it's not a desert, but it's very sort of sand, full of sand, okay? Dunes and sand. And the story follows this very man that is on an expedition to find insects because he collects them. He ends up in this village that's very peculiar because all the houses are built in this very deep sand pits. And he, because he's so enthralled in his research, he misses the train or the bus, I don't remember which one is it, but he's looking for spending the night there. And he finds himself in one of these sand pits, in one of these houses with a woman to spend the night. And there he learns how they actually sleep basically throughout most of the day, and then they spend the night shoveling sand so that the sand doesn't bury them alive, and this, they repeat every day for the entire life. And he actually gets sort of trapped in this house with this woman. So this is the premise. I get how this book is full of allegory, and it sort of, I feel like it borrows a little bit from like Kafka's Metamorphosis, and it's just something that I already seen, even though it's quite, of course, an old book. So I feel like in the 60s, because I feel like this book, I think it's from the 60s. I think it was written in the 60s, I'm pretty sure. Yes, 64. And in that period of time, this sort of stories were very popular, I would say. And you can see how sand is an allegory for time, how you can't really escape it, how we're trapped into average life and working, and I feel like this is still relevant today, how we work because in order to get money so we can live, but do we have time to live while we're, in all this working that we're doing? Is this a life that we really aspire to? Are we really okay with this? And here the idea is pushed to its extreme, and it works on a certain level, but at the same time I didn't feel like it resonated with me that much. I mostly found this very boring, especially in the beginning. It's such a short book. I hate when short books feel way longer, especially the first part. I guess like once you're in the mood, once you're in the sandpit, then things start to unfold a little bit in a more interesting way, but at the beginning he sort of rambles about sand and insects, and I was really losing my interest there, and I almost put down the book at that point. And that's basically the main reason. And then also some other elements of the story didn't really work for me. The sexual elements, the dynamics between the man and the woman weren't really, I don't know, they were supposed to be. Also, I found that this book was not as disturbing as everybody depicts it. I mean, it's not that what it describes is not disturbing in its nature, but I personally didn't, feel shocked while reading it. Also, sometimes the dialogue wasn't really clear, like I didn't really understand who was talking in what time period. Like, it's set in the present, but sometimes they would talk about maybe the past, but it wasn't really clear. There wasn't a real clear distinction, and I don't like to be confused by stuff. Mostly I feel very stupid, so yeah. But anyway, I feel like this is still an important book to read, and it certainly sparks discussions. Also, there's a movie that was made right after the publication of this book, also in the 60s. It's a black and white movie that sounds and looks like a good one, so I probably check that one out as well. But yeah, this one. And I listened to the audiobook for Memorial Drive by Natasha Thretheway. I give it 3 stars in the end. It was a good listen, it was a good book to listen to, but it didn't really stick with me that much. I was particularly enjoying this in the beginning. I think I already talked about this book in one of my videos. I really enjoyed the writing style. It's very poetic and impactful in how she describes her feeling and also the surroundings and everything. She's a very talented writer. Sorry, I should premise this. This is a memoir of Natasha and her sort of growing up, and then all leading to her mother's assassination. And it was interesting, but I also felt like, you know, towards the middle point, I was sort of losing a little bit of plot points and of interest as well. So it was slipping away from me. I cannot pinpoint exactly what didn't work for me in this book. I felt like maybe I needed a bit more nuance in the relationships and more information about her mother's previous marriage, because she got divorced from Natasha's father, and then Natasha had a stepfather who is the man who actually kills her mother. I don't believe that these are spoilers because this is a memoir. I don't feel like treating it like fiction. But anyway, so it doesn't really explain how her parents split and why, although this must have had, you know, real impact on her and on her mother as well. She does talk about her mother's upbringing, and that's very extremely interesting, but I don't feel like she digs deep into her mother's emotions as well. I don't know. I just felt like something was missing. I did find this a valuable experience, and if it sounds like something that would interest you, then definitely check this one out. Then we have the short and sweet Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. This book was very sweet. I don't have a lot to say about this. It was very quick. It's got illustrations inside. Also, the hardcover is beautiful beneath the dust jacket. There are several of these, and I got another one actually. I don't know if I'm gonna get all of them, but because in this one there's no Tigger, so I really wanted my Tigger. I love Tigger. But yeah, this is the story of Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin, and it was very nostalgic for me because I really enjoyed Winnie the Pooh growing up when I was actually very, very small. And my son also really likes Winnie the Pooh. We've got a couple of picture books, and he did watch snippets of the movie. He's still very young, but yeah, so since we were on a Winnie the Pooh kick, I thought I'd pick up this one, and it was really sweet. I really enjoyed this one. Then we have other 2 memoirs. I feel like I've read a lot of non-fiction this month. But yes, I'll just switch and actually talk about the one that I enjoyed the least first, and then the one that I enjoyed the most. So save it for last, I guess. So, I read The Best We Could Do by Thi Bui. And unfortunately, I give it 3 stars, so it's not fair to say that I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy this one, but not as much as everybody seems to be enjoying it. I was very surprised because it sounded like something that I would 100% love, and having this reviews that were stellar, I thought I was going to love it. But it was good, but it wasn't perfect. This is a memoir that follows the author as with her family. They flee Vietnam in the 70s to get to the US. Most of all is the story of her parents. So how they were very different, because her mom was from a rich sort of background while her father was very poor. and their worlds got together and how that happened and how their relationship evolved. And she's trying to reconcile with the way she was parented. I don't know, is that a verb? And with the way they were parented and how that affected their way of parenting. And also her own, because it starts with the birth of her son, of the author's son. Yes, I hope I explained this correctly. So I picked this one up for Vietnam because this month's countries for the Invisible Cities project were Vietnam, Peru, and Equatorial Guinea. I hope that's the right pronunciation. I'm still reading the book for Peru and I couldn't get to the one from Equatorial Guinea, but yes, this was for Vietnam. And as I said, it's a graphic memoir. The art, that's one of the other points that I probably didn't 100% love. I did love the color palette with all these oranges and browns. I love the palette, but I wasn't like a massive fan of the art style. Mostly my problem was that this was an incredible life story, but the execution was not as incredible. And I feel like sometimes people, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe they tend to rate the story instead of the execution of the story. Like, oh, this is amazing. You know, what they've been through is crazy. And then the rating goes up. But actually, I found it very confusing in terms of timelines. She jumps a lot, and not for reasons that it could detect. Like, it's okay if you don't go on in a chronological order. I don't mind that, but it has to be, there has to be a reason why you made this narrative choice to not go in a linear way. And I didn't feel like I could see why she was doing that. Like, especially when she was talking about the birth of her sisters and brother. She would tell about a sister, and then another sister that was born before, and then another sister that was born afterwards, and they were all like back to back, and I didn't really understand why she didn't go in a chronological order. But maybe it was just me. Maybe it's me that maybe I didn't get the point of that. But I found that nonetheless very confusing. Aside from the first part, like the very beginning and the end, where I think she explores emotions and feelings, I didn't feel anything towards her and her relationship with her parents. I feel like I would have loved to have more, especially her life, her own life. I mean, I get that this one is about her parents mostly, but I would have loved to see how she met her husband, how they adjusted, and ultimately really how she felt during the whole thing. So something for me was missing from this graphic memoir. I still feel like this is very important, and lots of people seem to absolutely love it. So definitely check this one out. I'm gonna keep it. I'm not gonna give this one away because I never read anything about Vietnam. So I feel like this one really gave me insight, especially on the political and historical side. So yeah, this one. And lastly, I want to talk about another audiobook, also a memoir, which is Sitting Pretty by Rebekah Taussig. And I absolutely love this one. I gave it 5 stars, and I feel like I think maybe this is the second book I give 5 stars this year, and that's crazy to me. I wish I read more books that actually are 5-star reads, because it's so rewarding, and I feel like I learned so much. And this is a memoir of the author, and she talks about her disability and how this affects her, but especially how society views disabled people, the stigma around disability, how little people really care about disabled people. She does a great job of raising awareness of what it feels like, what it means to be disabled, what it means to actually think outside of the box because you're forced to. It really made me think, because I am guilty of not all of the things she said, but most of the things she says, because I wasn't looking at the world toward a disabled perspective, and I never, even if I had, it's not that I never came across a disabled person, and I feel like I've never been rude to anyone as a lot of people are horribly, as she describes, but still I haven't been caring, or I haven't been interested enough to ask for perspectives, or take that into consideration. So I feel guilty for that, and I'm glad that the books like this one exist, because it really made me look at the world at sort of a different perspective, a different angle, and I could also relate to a lot of things she said. I am not disabled, but being neurodiverse, lots of things that she says, and also, of course, I'm not comparing the two things, they're very different. I can mask, I'm extremely privileged, but still I have ADHD, and some of the things she said absolutely resonated with me. How people that have a disability have to feel like they have to conform to the norm. They have to be like everybody else. That must be their main aspiration, to be like everybody else, to look like everybody else. Everything that goes against this, it's just wrong. Our body is just a product. And as a product, it has to be efficient, 100%. And when you're not efficient, you need to fix it. And it's just not the way people, humankind, should think, because she also tells how everybody could become disabled at any point because of accidents, because of old age. We tend to not think about this. We just think about the now, the here and now, and the norm. All of our bodies need help, intervention, and support in one way or another. And it's important that we get accustomed to think outside the box and use that to the advantage of everybody, not for the odd disabled person that might benefit from that change, but everybody could benefit from those changes to make the world a more accessible place for everybody. It was just so great. Her voice is great. She's also very witty and funny, and so engaging to listen to. The parts that I could relate the most is how she talks about how we tend to minimize our weaknesses to prove we can fight just as hard. And that's something that people that have a neurodiversity do as well, because they feel like they have to fit in the mold, and they don't want, maybe we don't want help because we feel like we have to conform to the way everybody thinks, to the way everybody acts. And it's just wrong. We should celebrate diversity and learn from it and enrich our thought processes and our environment with these things in mind. Or even if you're not neurodiverse, she talks about having a career and a body with limits, which could be physical. Pregnancy, like when you're pregnant, you have a body with limits, but you still are supposed to work just as everybody else does. You're supposed to go back to work after you gave birth. When you're on your period, at least where I live, you cannot call in sick. That's not, if you have a fever, you can stay home and you get paid anyway because you have a fever. But if you are menstruating, you're supposed to go to work like everybody else. But some people are really affected by menstruation, and I'm one of them, or I was one of them before giving birth. It's just so wrong that you're supposed to go and stay there even if you're in absolute pain, just because it's nothing. Everybody does that anyway. But yeah, I'm getting sidetracked, I think. I just think this book was absolutely fundamental and just perfect, and I would urge you to go and read it or listen to it. Either way, I think it's going to be amazing. And I'm glad to end this video on this note, because this book was just brilliant. So yeah, so that's it for April. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please let me know if you read any of the books that I mentioned. Let's chat in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!